Okay, over to you.
Right, I'm going to be talking about Helmholtz resonators. So what are Helmholtz resonators? Basically, it's a container or a cavity in there, has a hole in it, and either a neck or a port, which is like a tube going inside the container. It affects very narrow bandwidths, so it's much better at treating single frequencies like standing waves than a bass track would be, and they're usually box shaped. So the theory behind it is when a sound wave hits the resonator, the air in the neck is pushed inside. It compresses the air, then the pressure forces that lump of air from the neck back out, but then the momentum carries it outside of the neck again. So then there's a lack of pressure inside the cavity. It causes a rarefaction, and so it sucks the air back in. But then the momentum again carries the lump of air that was in the neck back into the bottle, and it repeats backwards and forwards at the frequency that is the standing wave. So there's a picture of it. So it acts like a spring. This oscillation uses up a lot of energy, so that causes it to absorb the energy from the activating frequency, which is what you want the standing wave to be. So there's an example, you can't see it very well. There's the air is moving up and down, and here's the pressure changing. So here's the formula. So F is the frequency. You get half the speed of sound divided by pi, and that's times the square root of the surface area divided by the length of the port times cavity volume. Now because the effective bandwidth is so narrow, the margin for error in design is very small. So one area often overlooked when making these is called port end correction, where the air outside of the port and at either end acts in sympathy with the air inside the port, so it makes the port a lot longer. So that port length is now 0.7 times the port diameter. So you have to add that onto the length of the port. So any shift in the frequency that you're treating is also connected to the diameter of the port and the cavity volume. So with a 3 to 4 inch port, the resonant frequency will be higher by around 10 to 15 hertz if you don't add in the port end correction. So that's enough for the whole Helmholtz resonator not to work on what you want it to work on. The shape is also important. A smooth cavity has very little friction, so it makes it very absorbent over a very narrow bandwidth. So it's like having a very narrow cut on an EQ, whereas a square or rectangular cavity has angled intersections, and so it makes it a much wider cut, but not as good as absorbing. Dampening can also be used to tune the Helmholtz resonator, so you can change the frequency that is being attenuated, but it also reduces absorbency. So the Helmholtz resonator was named after the physicist Hermann von Helmholtz, who wrote a book on the sensations of tone, published in 1862. The book describes the resonator that he developed for picking out particular frequencies, and these are a set that he had made, and well, that's them. There are also cases of Helmholtz resonators, but they weren't actually called Helmholtz resonators, they were just vases being used in amphitheatres by the ancient Greeks and Romans. So they would be positioned around the sort of stage area, and here's just a lot of them all together. They were also used in medieval churches. They were mounted inside the walls, which were quite thick, so that just the end of the port was visible. So if you ever go into a medieval church, you might see a hole in the wall, and that's what that's for. Here's a homemade one I found. It's just underground construction grade PVC tube, and then a bit of drain pipe and 2 sheets of MDF, one with a hole in the middle, and you just stick it all together, and when you're tuning it with dampening, you just wait until, or you don't stick it all together until you've tuned it. Placement is the last thing. Usually you place it in the corners, but if you get an FdA meter from somewhere like Radio Shack, you can walk around, and if you send out a signal tone at the frequency that you want to treat, then you know exactly where to place it. That's the end.